Sometimes we don't always have the luxury to process our loss and to grieve properly, especially when we have other responsibilities and people counting on us. So Absalom dies and David is mourning. David is grieving loudly. He is crying, my son Absalom, oh my son Absalom. It should have been me instead of you. And this actually was very discouraging to the troops who were with David and who had risked their lives to keep David safe and alive. This felt like a slap in the face for them. And so this is a collision between your personal heartbreak and the responsibility that you have. And so David's grieving his mourning becomes a public liability because he was king. Usually after a victory, there would be dancing, there would be shouting, there would be music, there would be eating, there would be rejoicing, there would be a triumphal entry. However, the Bible says that the troops stole into the city like thieves who had done something shameful. They had literally just crawled out from the forest of death and they fought their own countrymen just to save David. And they were expecting a thank you. But instead, what they heard in David's chamber was David crying for Absalom, who was the reason why they were fighting their own countrymen in the first place. And that sucked the morale out of the army. So Joab comes to David and he brutally rebuked David. His words were sharp and were empty of empathy. After all, Joab was the one who killed Absalom because he did what David could not do and what he knew needed to be done. He doesn't give David the space to mourn. He accused David of loving those who hate him, which is Absalom, and of hating those who love him, which is the army. And so he gave David an ultimatum and he tells David to go and speak to the men and encourage them, or else they would not be loyal to him anymore and they could even potentially rebel against David. It may seem heartless, but Joab was being a realist. Because although David had the right to grieve, he was still the leader that all of his troops were looking towards. And his primary duty as king was to serve the living, not to mourn those who were already dead. Because Joab saw the faces of the troops. He saw how discouraged they were. He saw that they were bloody, they were tired, they were exhausted. And so what they needed was encouraging words from David, but instead what they got was David weeping loudly in his chambers for a man that they killed, or that Joab killed, a man who was the reason why they were fighting in the first place and risking their lives. And so what they needed was validation from David, but instead that's not what they got. So Joab went and he gathered David really quickly and he told David to go and show his face to the men and to thank them. I feel bad for David because although his grief and his pain, they're valid, but they don't always happen in a vacuum because again, he had other people who were depending on him.